All right, let's get going, huh?
Let's go, gather up. Come on now. All right, fellas, you gotta remember your body is like day-old rice. If it ain't warmed up properly, something real bad can happen, yeah?
Athletes, take your mark, get set. It's time for the Addict to Athlete podcast. Hey, everybody out there, Coach Blu Robinson here. I want to thank you all so much for downloading, sharing, and subscribing to the podcast. Greatly appreciate you doing so. As always, jump on addictoathlete.org. You'll find all of our backlog podcasts, information about the team, how to start a chapter in your area, but more importantly, to kind of rally the troops and get a team behind you on your pursuits of addiction recovery and mental health awareness. Athletes, I'm excited today. Got a good guest in studio, one that came very highly publicized by Max, our producer, who says this guy's got the heart of a champion and the will to kind of change some lives. So, Jesse, welcome to the podcast, brother. Introduce yourself a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about your background and show how that heart of a champion really beats within that chest of yours, brother. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Blu. Appreciate you guys having me. And where do you want me to start? I mean,
tell us a little bit about you, man. Okay. I'd love to know more about you. I've known a little bit, but I'm sure that that's just the surface stuff, right?
Yeah, for sure. So I was born in Sacramento, California, and I eventually made my way to Southern Utah in 2011. And I've done mixed martial arts my entire life, whether it be wrestling or boxing or tying it all together. And in 2014, I started like a bucket list thing of things that I wanted to do before I was too old to do them, and then things I wanted to do before I died. And on my bucket list was to just do one mixed martial arts fight. And I did it with a company out of Las Vegas called Tough Enough, and they're the largest amateur promotion in the world. And so it came down to time to do it, and my opponent got injured, and the one of the gentlemen that I was training for a fight, his opponent got injured, and he was my best friend. And so they came to us, and they're like, "Hey, the only way that you guys are going to be able to fight is if you fight each other." And so my very first amateur mixed martial arts fight, I had to fight my best friend. And and so St. George News got a hold of it and everything, and they're like, best friends collide, and it was really publicized, real fun, whatever. I ended up doing really good in the fight. And afterwards, when they were filming or whatever, they're like, hey, you got to do another one. And so this turned into now a 10-year career of continuing to fight.
Imagine best friends. I've seen this in the world of baseball and stuff, but I've never heard hey man, let's get in the ring together as best friends, because it's a love-hate thing. I mean, I know. Yeah. I can't even fathom that. That's what movies are made out of, brother. So that's nuts. Mixed martial arts, though, I'm curious about that. What gravitated you towards that? Because I've interviewed a few folks that have had backgrounds like yours, and it always blows my mind at just the mindset you have to be a trained fighter, to put a lot of the anxieties aside, the worries and not worried about, you're going to get hit. Most people have this thing called self-preservation where they try to avoid that stuff. But I'm curious, was it the training within that kind of raised the confidence level, or was it just kind of this desire? Why that?
So
that style?
I'm from the ghetto. I originally from Sacramento, but I was raised in Oakland and Las Vegas, and so I had to learn how to fight at a young age. And my father was really big into wrestling. He was top in the world and stuff like that. So early on, it was to learn how to defend myself. And then what I found out in wrestling was the honor and the discipline, and just found a love, and it helped me grow up as a human being and have principles and things that I held very highly throughout my life. And so I fell in love with all the different disciplines. So Muay Thai, boxing, wrestling, jiu-jitsu, all of those things. And I found out through living that it applied to being a father, it applied to being a good husband, a work ethic, and all these different things that I could contribute to being a good person. And so A lot of people see it as like you're in there punching and beating the crap out of each other. And for me, for somebody who's done it a long time, I'm in there doing aggressive dancing. I'm in there playing. I'm in there playing chess. You know what I mean? And so it's like they say in baseball, like a for love of the game type thing. And so it's different skill sets that gentlemen have practiced, and it's to see which one is better. You know what I mean? Or who's more prepared, or who, you know what I mean? And at the end of the day, for me, it doesn't matter like the win, lose, or draw. What matters to me is, do I show that man good sportsmanship like conduct at the beginning and at the end? And I bow to that man and thank him for sharing that space with me. And there's only one person out of a lot of fights that I'm not in contact with. Every other person that we have shared the ring together, we're friends. We're you know what I mean. We bled together. You know what I mean. So it's been cool, man. Yeah.
That's quite a mind shift, like adjustment, because that's not what you think. You think it's, I hate that person, I hope to die, all that stuff, but that's not the case. And I've noticed that with guys that do what you do, and the mindset that you have to have about like, hey, although we may be opponents in the ring, we're still on the same team. And I think that has to do with a lot of areas of life. But I'm curious, with a background like that, growing up in those kind of environments. I'm sure life wasn't always, like focused and disciplined. Tell me a little bit about like what that lifestyle did for you and to you, because growing up in poverty and bouncing around, you have to kind of like adjust to your environment, and sometimes the environment kicks your butt. So I'm curious a little bit about the experiences of growing up in those kind of locations. It does make you have to be in some degree a fighter, even if it's not physical. You got to fight for, for education, for relationships. I mean, how big was the fight during your adolescence?
My parents split when I was young, when I was 3 years old, and my father was in and out of prison my entire life. And so, at a very young age, I believe three, my mom moved us to Las Vegas, and it was tough. My mom got married right away. It was a hard relationship with my stepdad in the beginning. You know what I mean, and all those things. And my father has been addicted to drugs the majority of my life. So in and out of prison and stuff like that. And finding my footing was probably the hardest thing as a child, to find like my place within my own home. You know what I mean? So it came out in addiction. It came out in trying to be seen. It came out in all the negative ways until I grasped onto something healthy, and that was sports for me. You know what I mean? And so that's what I've clung on to my entire life, to feel okay, to fit in, to have that physical desire to achieve greatness. You know what I mean? And I have my kids watching too, and I want them to know, like, it doesn't matter what we face in this life, we can't be held down. You know what I mean? Like, my goal is to show that my kids that you can chase your wildest dreams no matter what you've been through in this life, and at any level, and be have good sportsmanship like conduct in that process. Because I'm not undefeated. I have wins, I have losses, but how I've carried myself through that is what I want my kids to see. You know what I mean?
For sure, for sure. And I think that's a huge thing, so that our kids aren't destined to make the same mistakes we did, but also live their own life, because they're going to make mistakes and they're going to have to fight for what they want.
Yep.
And this life's not fair, dude. You
Yeah.
get sucker punched, you get blindsided,
Yeah.
all those kind of principles that I think get learned, that if we can teach our kids, then they won't, they won't turn out the way that the mainstay situation would bring. I am curious about this though, because like for me, growing up in a situation similar to yours, where there's a divorce and stepdads and all this kind of stuff, when did you start kind of channeling some of that childhood frustration into the discipline that you have now? Because discipline is a funny word that most people, I think, fail to recognize what it authentically means, right? Discipline with the root word disciple comes from, student and teaching. And so you're kind of a student through the experience. How did you begin to discipline yourself to stay away from, the substances, to focus in on the training? Because I'm a firm believer that athletes that have histories of addiction make the most amazing athletes because they know what it's like to operate during periods of pain. So I'm curious about your discipline and how you've developed that through martial arts, through fighting, through life in and of itself.
So I would say the first like go around of what I learned as far as discipline and having a coach to look up to was my freshman year of high school. It was the first time that I was going to be entering wrestling. My older brother, he tried wrestling and he lost every match. And like our dad was a really big deal in wrestling. That my grandparents traveled around the U.S. to fit whatever program was best for him, and kind of just put everything into his wrestling. And so when I was still in middle school, I would go watch my brother, and it was so painful to watch him lose every match. And so when I finally went in and had the ability to wrestle my freshman year, I was going to show everybody that I was just like my dad. The apple didn't fall too far from the tree. And I remember going into the wrestling room, and what I saw on the wall was honor, respect, and discipline, right? And so I'll never forget those three words. And then my coach, his name was Coach Leet, and it was called Bonanza in Las Vegas. It was a high school out there, and I was fortunate enough to be trained by some of the best in the world. Frank Mir was a UFC champion back in the day, and he was a graduate there that would come back and teach us. And so I would say, like, as far as discipline or even having a male figure to look up to in my life, those were the guys that I clung to because I didn't gravitate towards my stepdad. My father was no longer in the picture. So when getting in trouble or acting out didn't go in my favor like I thought it would, to be noticed from my family, to, you know what I mean, have it, because I had a family of 10 kids. So we were a blended family, 6 sisters, four brothers, and yeah, so I turned to being good at something to be noticed, you know what I mean, or fit in or anything like that. And so I found discipline within those rooms, and what it did is it bled out into the other areas of my life, into my schoolwork, into my home, and wrestling and that lifestyle became my entire everything, you know what I mean? And so that would be one of the first places that I found what discipline meant, through achieving, just trying, you know what I mean? Just giving it your
Yeah.
best. And so, yeah.
Dude, that's awesome. As you were describing that, a thought came into my head. And, on Addict to Athlete, we do a lot of metaphor type learning, right? If you're going to be an elite individual in addiction recovery, you can be an elite athlete. The same principles kind of apply. But I'm curious, when you step into the ring and you look across at your opponent does not expect you to win. So I'm curious, like, just like in addiction recovery, right? The addiction doesn't expect us to win. What do you look for when you step into the ring and kind of like evaluate your opponent? Like, I'm sure you don't just go in there with a shoulder roll, a roundhouse. I'm sure you kind of like watch, just like you would kind of measure up an opponent in the ring and likening that to your opponent of addiction. Like, what do you look for, man? Like, what do you notice? I'm curious about the small details. You're like, oh, does that make sense? Like
No,
the
of
little
course,
secrets.
100%. So, I mean, the journey of the fight on fight day comes at a minimum, if you have a camp and no backouts and no injuries, or not taking a fight on short notice, starts 3 months before the fight. Now what you do is, whoever you're fighting for, whatever promotion it is, here in Utah, they have Fierce, they have Steel Fist, they have CFC down here. And what they do is they give you normally 2 or 3 guys, and they say, hey, which one of these guys are you interested in fighting? And I try to always pick the toughest guy, whoever's going to be my hardest challenge, just because I enjoy challenge, you know what I mean? And so the preparation and the things that I look for come from his footage, right? On how he fights, what his style is. If he's a stand-up fighter, then my whole goal is to take that man into deep waters onto the ground. You know what I mean? When I can keep my ego out of the fight and not, so if he's a professional boxer, dude's just killing it at boxing, and I get my ego involved, I'm going to say, hey, you know what? I'm going to outbox this dude. Well, my background comes from the ground, so why would I try to outbox this dude? You know what I mean? That's just not a good idea. So that being said, that the preparation starts there. You sit down with your coaches, and they kind of just walk through a game plan and what our camp is going to look like. And as far as any training, you know, since I've been doing this for a while, I try to just heighten the things that I need to expose against him, if that makes sense. And and yeah, and so on the gentleman that I'm gonna fight, he's really good at jujitsu, and that's something that I teach and stuff like that. So my preparation for this fight is to hone my skill on the ground in case it goes to the ground. You know what I mean? And so watching his footage and what his things is that he does, you know what I mean? What if he gets in this situation, okay, what is it that he normally tends to do? Which way does he roll? Which arm does he grab? Is he right-handed? Is he left-handed? Which one does he lead? Does he get uncomfortable in any situations? You know what I mean? And so if he gets uncomfortable right here or hesitates, let's get him into that position. You know what I mean? So instead of responding, he's reacting. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. See, and I love that, man, because if you think about it in terms of recovery too, it's like you can't just go into your recovery with one style, meaning like I'm a 12 stepper. Well, that's fantastic, but you might need addict to athlete. You might need smart recovery. Shoot, you might need residential treatment. There's
That
a lot
tool
of different
belt.
things like that. Yeah, you see, and like you said, like if this guy is going to take you to the ground, then you better damn well know what to do when you're on the ground. Then
Exactly. Yeah.
I love that mindset, and you won't know, right, until it happens. You're like, oh, unless you make it happen. So tell me a little bit about that. Like, how do you adjust when you're in the thick of things? Like, because is it just a natural reaction because you practice so much? Does that make sense? Or are you consciously aware, like, oh, next step?
For sure, there is a natural state to it, right? But if you've practiced enough, or like towards the end of my training, I train with my eyes closed, right? Because I have to know what's coming or what's happening, so I can think it in my mind. Because this isn't just a physical thing, man. And that's why I say I'm playing chess in there. It is so much a mental thing and a fortitude that you have to be able to grind through tough spots. And it's the same thing in addiction or life. You know what I mean? You have to be able to have that tool belt to pull from, right? And I'm big in 12-step program. Like I absolutely love everything that offers to me, but that's not the only thing that I pull from. You know what I mean? I do addicts to athletes. I do things that I have found out that work for me. There's not one set way that works for each individual. That's what makes us unique, right? Like as individuals. And so like honing those skills off of the, let's say, mat or the ring is what helps me inside of the ring, you know. And so yeah, you anticipate things that are coming, you find adjustments, you do things like they're called feints, right? And so if I feint with a kick or whatever and he reacts, I know that he's going to react to that, so I throw a couple feints and then I throw a punch. You know what I mean? So I see that he's reacting down there. I'm trying to get his attention away from the places in which I'm trying to attack. You know what I mean?
Ah,
And so
yeah.
it's a mind thing. But I do this thing before I get into the cage. You know, everyone kind of has their little thing right before they step into the cage, and I do like the Ronda Rousey stomp. I kind of stomp when I enter there, and right when I stomp, I bow, and then as I'm down there bowing, I say to myself, I say, "Self, you will win." And it has nothing to do with my hand being raised at the end of it. It's that I will win in life.
I love it.
Life period. It does, at the end of the day, there's this dude named Court McGee, right? And he is
Ah, yeah. You know
dude,
him.
dude, stud, right? And
Yeah.
I
Good
was
man.
up at Fierce fighting, maybe 5-6 months ago, and he was there, and I was sitting there chopping it up with him, and he's like, "Yeah, man, I just got 17 years, and this is what I'm doing." I was like, "Dude, I've watched your whole career, man. Like, I am one of your biggest fans. I know the things that you do. Like, I keep up on all that. You go out to the prisons and share your story, and like." And he's like, "Hey, so look, check it out, man." He goes, "I want you to know that this fighting doesn't mean anything." He's like, all this stuff that I'm doing is a platform for me to carry a message for the things that matter, right? Because I'm here to help that next suffering athlete, that next suffering person in sobriety, to show them that somebody that has fallen as far as I have is capable of getting up and achieving greatness. And I'm just like, dude, this is, yes, that, you know what I mean?
Bring it.
That.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's cool.
You're spot on, and I love the analogy because you see how great those metaphors work together. But I'm curious too because there's going to be times when you're feeling like you've got every move matched and you're just that one small step ahead. But then there's other days and challenges where we get that little bit of self-doubt that creeps in. Like I'm curious how you flow with self-doubt. Like how long do you let it hang out, and how do you excuse it? Because self-doubt, when you're kind of getting locked down on the ground and the ref's down there getting ready to call you out, it would be probably a death sentence. How do you mindfully channel self-doubt? Because we've all got it, but how do you get rid of it?
So I think that like there's a character defect, right? Self-doubt is a character defect, but I also believe that your character defects can be your assets, right? And so if I'm capable of acknowledging for whatever reason that's entered my mind, thanking it for what it's taught me or why I'm there, but still having the ability to continue, it's that drive, it's that passion for what I do. I'm in love with the game. You know what I mean? If I wasn't, I wouldn't be doing it, because if I've lost that passion for what I am passionate about, I have no more business being in there and doing it, because it's a very high level in which I perform, and these guys, it's a no mess around sport, and so I don't know, perseverance. You know what I mean? Having the ability to continue in tough times, and so it's a mindset, I guess. Even when it's challenged, that's when I get to grow it, right? Because those uncomfortable situations and not giving up in them is what it's all about. You know what I mean? How am I ever going to get better if I'm not challenged throughout the process?
Mm-hmm. Dude, I love that. So I am curious then, how does a fighter, an individual like you who's got recovery under their belt, who's got this sport, this love for that game, how how do you kind of how do you reach that level of humility to where you're like, this could all be taken away if I'm not on top of my game? How does a fighter remain humble to it as well? Because you get the Muhammad Ali's, which I am the greatest, and we know he was.
Yeah,
But I'm curious, how do you stay humble when you know what you're capable of in the ring or on the streets? Like,
yeah.
where's that gratitude flow from?
Man, I got a story for you.
I love it. I love it.
And it's a humbling story, right? And something that I pull from for my entire life. And so I was wrestling in high school, and I had made it to the regional level, and I was in a tournament, and all I had to do was beat this gentleman who was the number one in the region one more time. I had already beat him, right? And so this is as a freshman. So this is at the beginning. I just want to quote that I was very young when this happened. um, and so I looked, and the crowd, the whole stadium was just packed, and I was cocky, right? I'd already put a whooping on everybody, and I just had to beat him one more time, and I had it done. I looked up to the crowd and I said, I am going to beat this dude. And my coach saw me, right? So I don't think I need to tell you what happened. I did not beat that dude. He beat me. But look, this is the kicker, right? My coach made me grab the microphone and apologize to the entire crowd and to his team for no kidding, for saying what was going to happen. And really, those 3 words on the wall, that was disrespectful. That was not having honor for me and for the flag that I was flying on my, you know what I mean, uniform. And, and so from that day forward, I decided that whatever sport I was doing, whatever it was that I was a part of, that I would let. So for instance, in fighting, I let my hands do the talking. I don't ever say what's gonna happen. I don't I don't want to feel that way again. And then more importantly, I don't want to make somebody else feel that way. You know what I mean? Beneath me, above me, something like that. At the end of the day, it's where like I chiseled the beginning of my sportsmanship like conduct. And so it's super, super important to me that I praise whoever it is that I'm a part of in there with for just their ability to come in there and perform on that level and share that space with me. You know what I mean? It's so much less about my hand being raised than it is about who I was and how I conducted myself, because I'm under the spotlight. You know what I mean? Like it's highly promoted. In this fight here, I'm the main event in my hometown. Like the amount of people that are going to be there, my children, co-workers, people that I've worked in the past, recovery scene, everybody is going to be present. So the manner in which I conduct myself will be remembered. And so, and most importantly, man, my son's in the crowd. You know what I mean? And so he gets to see who his father is in those times, and that's what rings truest to me. You know what I mean?
Man, dude, that's amazing. What insight did the coach have? I mean, holy cow, to like say, all right, Mr. Fancy Pants, get up here.
Yeah.
Because that would be incredibly humbling, like, you know, and to really kind of respect it, because you get some coaches that go way over with that kind of stuff, and you get some that do just right. And that was huge. That was huge.
He didn't know at that time how that would mold or affect me for the rest of my life.
Mm-mm.
But let's be honest here. I mean, that how could it have not? You know what I mean? And so it's one of those life-changing moments that I was incapable of not holding on to, because you got to think, like, that man was a father figure to me. That man showed up for me when the men in my life that were supposed to be there, or my heroes or people to look up to as I was growing up, wasn't there. So when he spoke, I listened. You know what I mean? And he was just somebody he was one of the first influential men in my life. So I knew that when our interactions were personal, that it was personal. You know what I mean? And that he wouldn't stray me away from something that would build my character, or, you know what I mean? He didn't have ulterior motives in the process.
Absolutely. Well, no, and that's the beauty of it. I often tell the athletes I'm working with, like, just like forecasting a race, right? Like a 26.2-mile marathon, that's a long way to run. So it's inappropriate to say when I finish and when I cross that finish line, because a lot could go wrong in between mile 1 and mile 26.2. And so I love that mindset of like, hey, I'm going to let my feet do the talking. I'm going to let my hands do the talking. I'm going to let my heart do the talking. I'm not going to do the talking. That is, to me, one of the most amazing principles we could learn about not getting too fancy for our britches there. But I'm curious, you said this thing too. You said you've had wins and you've had losses. Both of them teach you something. I'm curious what both those have taught you, because sometimes victories in a certain way can also be losses, and losses can be victories. So I'm curious kind of how you approach, the concept of win or lose, I'm still going to be the same person. Like, how do you stick to that?
So it's a very understood concept within my head that you don't ever lose, you learn, right? And so when you have the ability to have a broadened outlook on life through your experiences, and that's just not being closed-minded and being teachable, right? And so when you have that to pull from, it doesn't matter what you do. If you prepare to the best of your ability, you leave no stone unturned. Whatever is going to happen is going to happen. But did I show up? And did I perform to the best of my ability? Do I feel comfortable about what I brought in there? You know what I mean? And so for that, people ask, hey, do you get nervous before the fight? Well, hell, if I didn't prepare and I'm taking this on short notice, then yeah, I'm super nervous. But if I gave it my all, if I listened to my coaches, if I was on the right diet, if I listened to my sports endurance trainer, if I did all of these things, and then whatever they said to do, and then when they weren't looking, my integrity was I doing more, then it's okay. You know what I mean? Like, it's okay. And as far as like the wins and stuff like that, I learned something more from my losses than I do my wins, right? The wins is praise and gratitude and like, hey, you did it and stuff like that. But how can I pick myself up off the ground when maybe I put an expectation on myself to get my hand raised, or I already know everybody there supporting me expects me to win. You know what I mean? They don't know how to see it any other way than that, And so it's the times when you're down. It's the times when it doesn't go your way. You know what I mean? And what can I like slow down for a moment in my life, kind of recap, look, and see what's going on, and then how can I make an adjustment, right?
Yeah, see, that to me is one of the most amazing things too, because it doesn't matter if they're cheering for you or if they're booing for you. At that point, it's all just noise, and if you literally, and I love what you said, and listeners, I need you to really take heed to what Jesse mentioned, and he said it so quick that I don't know if you realize the magnitude of it, but he said when he's prepared, he gets into that ring, he knows he's put in the work, which means that one extra sit up. That 5 extra pounds, that one extra, like passing of the donut, whatever it is, that when you get in there, that you've done all that you can do, and it's hopefully just a little bit more than what your opponent is. And I love that because that's that self-confidence that I think a lot of us lose in addiction. We lose the self-confidence that if you go into treatment, if you go into 12-step, if you go into Addict, if you're doing recovery and you're doing it well, when you're out there in the real world, in the ring of life, like even if you get sucker punched, you're going to be able to react. There's got to be a level of self-confidence that you have that's just like, I've done everything I can. Now's the moment. Does that bring an extra edge for you when you know that you've done all you could and a little bit more?
100%. Like, just for a little bit of an example, man, like I have my routine training and stuff like that and everything that I'm asked to do. And so when I was done with training last night, we have this infamous hill down here called Old Airport Hill, right? And yeah, and so when I'm done with training, my goal is that to beat my last time and running up that hill every night. Those aren't things that say, "Hey, coach, you got to go do this," or "Let's do this," or that's after when nobody's looking. You know what I mean? Like, am I giving that extra effort because dude, I want this. You know what I mean? And nobody's looking. You're the only one that knows. You know what I mean? And and that's I don't know, it's just a gift to have that drive and consistently shoot for more.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I'm curious too about this, brother. Like you've kind of mentioned that when your son's out there in the stands, you know that you're there for bigger reasons. Um, with your own dad, has he ever seen you at your best with this, or is he kind of the guy that's kind of like, maybe not? Like, I'm curious. Like, what's that like?
So my dad, I think he's about 15 years clean and sober now, and he retired. All my family grew up in the Bay Area, but my grandparents retired to Mesa, Arizona about 15 years ago, and he followed them down there. But when I started my career about 15 years ago, he was somebody that I cared to have in my corner. And funny enough, my dad cornered my best friend in my first amateur fight. And if anybody knows like my weaknesses, it's my father. And I looked at my dad and I said, "Check this out, Dad." I said, "I will disown you if you do not tell that man everything he can to beat me." You know what I mean? I want this to be fair. And my dad said, "Say less." Okay, I got it. And so my dad's, so he's not a coach or anything like that. He has a lot of knowledge in wrestling, stuff like that. But he would be like what you would call like my celebrity corner, not the man I'm pulling information from during the fight, but somebody that brings an emotional impact in my life. You know what I mean? Like it's like the first time my father got to watch me wrestle. He got out of prison, and I went and lived with him my sophomore year in the Bay Area. I went to school out there, and like his old wrestling partner was my coach, and he got to see his son wrestle for the first time. And I went in there, and I was wrestling for his rival school that he wrestled for, and I beat everybody from the lightweight to heavyweight. And my dad got to see that, and it was like the first, you know what I mean? It was a huge moment for me. And so, yeah, just like, I don't know, with him not being present for the majority of my life, I wanted him to show like the apple didn't fall too far from the tree, man. Like, you know what I
I
mean?
love it.
It's something in the blood, or you know what I mean? I don't know.
Yeah, no, I love it. See, that's amazing. Again, this is the stuff that movies are made out of, man. I hope you're journaling all this stuff because there's a lot of inspiration here. But and I wish we had more time because I've got so many more questions. But one of them that I really think is super important is you're kind of in the midst of an amazing like happening, right? Life is happening. But you also started this whole podcast off by saying that you created a bucket list, stuff you wanted to get done before it was game over here. What are like the top 3 things on that bucket list that you still haven't done yet that's still in the crosshairs? Because I'm curious about what comes next because I'm sure this will have to end at
For
some point
sure.
because
Yes.
everything
Yep.
does, right?
Yes.
So what's next on the horizon? Like what else would you like to see, do, be a part of, touch, taste, feel?
So before my fighting, before anything, long-term consistent sobriety, right? That's the goal. That's the pinnacle. When I can put that first, everything else follows, right? And so that tool belt that we were talking about, pulling from all the different things that make me feel like a principled man at the end of the day. And the number one thing is long-term consistent sobriety. But my next move has been the transitioning into teaching. I want to teach kids special needs. Like that's what I want to do. That like that's my end game is so an outlet for special needs children to be able to come and find some peace and I mean they're angels on earth, man. And so like I always had a super big connection with that, and that's a life goal of mine. And so where I am reaching at the end of my career, I might have a couple more fights that I'll do. And that's the influence that I want to have, and something that I want to leave, this world a better place. And so, yeah, that's what's next.
Amazing. That is so awesome. So I know you do have something on the horizon too. I want you to share with the listeners a little bit about what's coming down the pipeline. You got a fight coming up, and I'm curious about like where's it at? How do we follow you? Give me all the socials so that people can support you and give you back the inspiration you're giving them.
Right on, man. I appreciate that. So this fight that's coming up is on February 1st. I landed the main event for a company called CFC. It's Crown Fighting Championship. A gentleman named Aaron Reese, who owns Fusion Mixed Martial Arts down here in St. George, has been he's just a stud, right? His whole family, everybody. And so that's his promotion. And then I think he has some other people that own it with him or whatnot. But so February 1st, CFC at the Washington County Fairgrounds. It'll be in the Grafton building. And you can buy tickets. It's www.crownfc.net. And then, so there's that. I'm on Instagram at Cali. It's Kali dad, Callie's dad, KALIS dad 13. And then just Jesse Salmon on Facebook. And so,
Perfect.
that would be awesome,
Perfect. Man, yeah, brother. I'm just blown away by just your vision and your discipline and your heart. Like it's kind of a rare thing to have all those things line up to create one great whole, which is you. But I appreciate like just the mindfulness that you have. I mean, the things that you've been able to teach today on such a small platform, I think is going to ripple effect into some great things to come, which is going to, ultimately put you in a position to do what you want to do. And, I hope to high heaven you take lots of good mental notes, because you got to write a book, man. This would be a
Right
number
on,
one
man.
bestseller for sure.
I appreciate it. I appreciate
Yeah,
it.
but
I do want to say real quick,
go ahead.
we're
Yeah.
talking about ripple effects. Because
Mhm.
of you and the people that you have affected, meaning Judy specifically,
Oh yeah. Don't you,
because of
Judy?
because of her and then because of the work that you've done with her, I am in the place that I am today. I want to give a
Oh,
shout out to like Lionsgate and the staff there, but specifically Judy. She is somebody that has helped me understand life and the importance within having like balance and athletics and all the other things pulled from. So super big shout out to Judy and
that's
you.
awesome.
So thank you.
That makes me feel like very, very proud of you and of her, because we all kind of come from these dark places, and when the student becomes the teacher, that's the goal of all this.
Right?
And brother, you are right in line to do that exact thing. So thank you for those words, brother.
Yeah, thank you.
Listeners, we will put all of Jesse's contact information, the upcoming event, here in the show notes. In fact, because of that, I'm going to bump this podcast up earlier. You're gonna bump up in front of a few others, because I want to get this out so people can
Hell
see
yeah.
and watch. So we'll get that in the show notes. Follow the links. Go down there if you're in the area. Let's support Jesse by screaming out there in that main event. Good luck to you, brother. I'll be following you close. Okay.
I appreciate you, Blue.
Stay
Thank
tuned.
you.
Athletes, you've been well fed. As always, do your best to turn your mess into your message.